Theft in the eyes of a Catholic is completely wrong without any exceptions. Other than being an offense against federal law, theft is something that weakens an individual's relationship with God. It's a dishonest act, and it's always done with malicious intention. You cannot steal on accident. Humans have been stealing since the threshold of humanity's existence, for it is a result of original sin. Humans naturally have the burden of jealousy and envy, and sometimes this drives some people to steal other people's materials. It is unfair, and society cannot function if everyone is out stealing everything. Although everybody is brought up in society that teaches us that theft is completely wrong and unjust, many people who have a habit of stealing do not feel any remorse because they're so used to doing it. Depending on what it is that's being stolen, the act of theft is typically a venial sin. It doesn't completely destroy your relationship with God, but it definitely weakens it.
People who currently have less than others can simply take from those who have more. We call this concept theft. In other words, they can just take it. It is an idea that is rarely discussed and let alone defended. Theft is wrong in many ways. We are taught that at a very young age for the most part, unless your parents teach you otherwise. With everything, obviously are exceptions. Cases in which the alternative to theft is so dire that most will grant that stealing is permissible. Existing property rights, even if unjust, must ordinarily be respected. Theft is wrong because it has bad consequences, is illegal, and disrupts legitimate expectations. People think that theft can be justified in certain emergency cases. We live in a world in which billions live in dire poverty, yet typically people do not think it is justified to steal from the rich in order to fund aid organizations. Theft has negative consequences no matter what. Stealing is against the law. Perhaps this might be what makes it wrong.
The virtues and vices of theft. Theft has no virtues whatsoever. Theft is the deliberate taking of another's property for oneself because you or the person stealing something doesn't want to pay for or work for that item for themselves. Theft has no virtues whatsoever. It is not a good deed. It is not a deed of God, and it is condemned by God. Some vices of theft are 1. Theft, stealing, taking another's property, which is one of the commandments. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's items, something along those lines. Theft is also a vice because it is a sin and leads us to commit a mortal sin against God. So yeah, theft.
Theft is the secret taking of another's property against the reasonable will of that other. It is to be noted that the word secret is not employed to exclude the idea of the owner's presence and advertence while the theft is being committed. It is used merely to signify that the crime has been perpetrated without violence towards him. Not only the taking, but the keeping or the use unjustly of what belongs to another against his will is to be considered theft. The sin of theft is of itself grievous. Because it violates the great virtues of justice and charity, St. Paul 1 Corinthians 6:10, enumerates it as one of the transgressions which bars the offender from the kingdom of heaven. Still, as it happens with regard to other delinquencies, its guilt may often be venial. This is particularly true when the value of what is filched is inconsiderable, or as the theologians say, is not grave matter. The determination of what is grave matter whose taking, namely, is prohibited under pain of mortal sin, is beset with great difficulties and has offered room for widespread difference of opinion. It is agreed, however, that a distinction is to be drawn between relative and absolutely grave matter. The grievous of theft seems to depend on the way in which the purpose of which makes the respecting of property rights obligatory are set at naught. These ends are, first, the preservation of peace and harmony among individuals, and then the guaranteeing of the security of human society, as well as the providing an incentive for each one to pursue an industrious career.
First Book of Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 10. The sin of theft is of itself grievous, because it violates the great virtue of justice and charity. So according to St. Paul, theft goes against some of the core beliefs of Catholicism. While some believe all forms of thievery are wrong, the Catholic Church believes it is okay to do so for self-preservation. While this contradicts the laws most countries have in place, it still serves its purpose. As Catholics, we believe in the right to life, and that we should love our neighbors as ourselves. So, should people truly have to resort to stealing if food was not just shared? However, haven't we learned that God provides for his people? And as Christians, we are taught of the time when the Israelites were fed manna while walking through the desert. During this time, the core laws of Western religion were made, one of them being, "You shall not steal." While this area may seem vague, it still follows Catholic ideal and morality, with an expectation from the people to take part in the teachings. By this I mean, we are expected to take part as a group in these teachings. We have a role to fill. In order for these laws and virtues to have purpose, we must act on them. So if it wasn't for the man giving away food to a homeless man with a family, would that family not steal to live?